Hello and welcome to Energizing Habits, simple strategies for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, Vicki Cleary, and I guide ambitious women just like you to find more focus, more energy, and more productivity so they can thrive, whether it's in business or in life, all by tapping into sustainable habit change around nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. Are you ready? Here we go. Hello and welcome back, my ambitious friends. It has been quite a while since we've been together, so I've got quite a few updates, and it's just been kind of like one thing after another type of thing, right? All right. So if you tuned into the last episode, you knew that I was planning a trip to Florida with my daughter, just the two of us for a vacation. And we had the trip. It was great. There was a lot of ocean beach time that we got to spend, and a lot of together time, which was good. It was really good. And yeah, we had a great time. So found that there's, other than going to the beach and a couple of the shops, there's not a whole lot to do right there in the Daytona area. And we didn't venture beyond. So next time we'll be checking out some of the other, places further out so that we can have a little bit richer of an experience. But we were just fine having all the beach time. So she also has since started her senior year in high school, continuing to explore various colleges and track teams. So September's already shaping up to be quite an adventure, right? With all the things that we'll have going on. And of course, you would also know, if you were on the last episode, that I was working through my own Energy to Thrive project. So I was taking myself through it. And just as you'll kind of see with the topic for today's episode, it's one of those things like when you get into a habit and you're really trying to get it ingrained into your lifestyle, sometimes it's best to just stay with the one habit and really focus on it. And so that's where I landed with sleep. So I've been working on trying to develop my sleep habit for a while in terms of getting at least 7 hours of sleep, right? I will fall asleep very easily. I wake up relatively easily, but it's getting the duration of sleep that I know is really good for recovery, for mental recovery, and the whole bit. So, especially when we transitioned into the school schedule with all the things going on, I was like, I'm just going to hang out on sleep and really get it nailed into this new schedule for the fall, going through, probably till next summer. And so far it's going really good, right? I've been able to be very, having the boundaries. This is bedtime. This is knowing when I have to wake up so that I get my 7 hours. Knowing that I need to put the phone down at a certain time so that I can make sure to get those hours. So it's just having a little bit more discipline. So really starting to make progress on that habit pretty recently. It was especially when we were transitioning to the new school schedule and everything, that it just kind of threw some curveballs back into where we were last year. Just like, nope, that's not going to work. So we relaid the boundaries. And then once I feel good about that, then I'll move on to the next habit, and I'll share through some of the other habits that I was working on. But that one has just been probably the most important for me for the past couple of months, honestly. I'm also working on a corporate wellness program. So, I think that I do one-on-one coaching. And we've been talking about the Energy to Thrive project for a while. That basically takes you through the habit change that you need in order to have more energy, get out of burnout, and just be able to show up and thrive, right? And I wanted to take that into a corporate setting. So I'm working on what a corporate wellness program would look like. And really so that companies and their leaders can help identify burnout in their employees and help them do something about it, versus just like they get to the point of burnout and, hey, I can't do this anymore, I'm gone, which is costly for those companies, right? So I'm working through that. But also in order to help improve the employees' health, which of course then improves their morale and their engagement, and then has a very positive impact to their company. So, working through that. And I'm not sure if I feel like I had mentioned this on a previous episode, but I want to mention it today that I have been going through. It's a women's leadership program called The Thread. So it started right here in Kansas and has since franchised to Kansas City. So it's been awesome to watch the program grow. But the cohort that I'm in is actually wrapping up this month. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had a workshop based on a book, also, I think, that was created here in Kansas as well, at the Kansas Leadership Center. The book is called When Everyone Leads. There's a subtitle that I can't think of at the moment, but the greater title is When Everyone Leads. And so we got a little snippet of their full day workshop and what's in the book just in this little workshop that we did with the Thread Collective. So what we were learning in that workshop actually inspired today's episode, which is why I wanted to bring that up. You never know when inspiration will strike, right? So I think that today's episode is going to be one that perhaps changes the way that you approach the challenges that you face. Could be career, could be health, your personal life. And chances are there in those areas and across the spectrum, there have been challenges that you faced. You've tried some different things to solve these challenges and likely were unsuccessful. You were probably successful, but there are other times where you were likely unsuccessful. And so this might give some insights as to why that happened. So I think the key thing, without spoiler alert, really, the reason that maybe you would have not been successful in any of solving those challenges is that you were probably solving the problem with the wrong solution. So let that sit for a minute, right? Like, okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, I was trying to do this and this solution seemed to fit, but yet I didn't get the result I wanted. So have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, but still not making that progress? When you're tackling something, maybe it's something that needs a different approach. So today we're going to actually talk about two different types of challenges and how they actually need two different types of solutions. And it's something that it's actually I've seen it in the tech world, I've seen it in kind of the corporate world, and I hadn't really thought about it towards personal transformation before until I was sitting in this workshop, and I thought that sounds like the same kind of issues that my clients have when they've been trying to do their own personal transformation. We've been solving the challenges with the wrong, or trying to solve the challenges with the wrong solutions. So we're going to explore what a technical challenge is, what an adaptive challenge is, and so that you understand the difference between the two. And I think as we unveil some things, you might understand how you could possibly get unstuck in some areas and really start making some progress. So, of course, let's start at the beginning. What are technical and adaptive challenges? If you've not heard of these two terms before, let's dig in just a bit. And maybe you've heard of them, but maybe you're just still a little fuzzy on what the difference is. So technical challenges are clear problems that actually have a clear solution. And they're challenges that can actually be solved using existing facts, information, knowledge that you have, skill sets, expertise. So when you get into the thing, the work to solve it is actually quite efficient because you already know what to do, or the person doing it already knows what to do. So they know what to do and they expect to fix the problem. So these are typically approached with a sense of confidence, with, hey, I've got this, right? I've got the skill. And if you're wanting to think about what does this look like for me in my life, in my real world, might look something like creating a report something as simple as creating a report, running a meeting, or even creating a budget, right? It's pretty clear what needs to happen, and you just have to do it. And so when you already know what it is, then it's a technical challenge, technical solution. Some other examples that you might have seen are software bugs or system downtime, or even budget overruns. So again, these challenges involve using, again, knowledge, tools, expertise to help find the solution, or you actually already have the solution and you just have to implement it. So the challenge is solvable. And again, technical challenges are clear problems that have clear solutions. Now, to the other end of that is it doesn't always have to come from you, the solution. Like it's just maybe like the dishwasher's broke. I need to call the dishwasher fixer person, the mechanic, the handyman, whatever, who has the skill. But someone has the skill. It's just a matter of pulling them into the project to get it fixed. Then there are the adaptive challenges. And this is where things get really interesting. So adaptive challenges are deeper and systemic, and they are problems that don't have clear solutions. They don't have a one-size-fits-all solution. And in fact, the solution may change over time because the situation of the challenge is changing. So like a really good example that came out of the workshop that they were talking about is like climate change. I mean, think of all the things that are around climate change and trying to solve for it. There's a lot of different things at play. That is an adaptive challenge. So an adaptive challenge actually requires us to change some behavior, to change practices, or even like just the way that we work on things, the way that we're going to do the thing. And many of those times, like the behavior, the practices, the way that we do things are deeply ingrained. Like we know how to do it this way. And so when you have to make the change to something different, that's where it becomes difficult. So the challenge themselves are often complex. Climate change is a really big one, but it doesn't have to be that big, for it to be an adaptive challenge. But there's likely some fluidity, there's some change with circumstances. So the solutions then also require us to change, right? So again, changing our the way that we do things, learning how to do new things, changing our attitudes, maybe even adjusting or reprioritizing our values and our norms, and adopting an experimental mindset. And that just means that rather than I'm going to do something and I'll be done, I'm going to try something. I'm going to see the effects of that attempt, and then I'm going to learn, and I'm going to, make some changes before I try again. So we're experimenting as we try to solve the problem. So again, you can't just follow a checklist for this kind of thing, for this kind of challenge, and expect things to work. So adaptive challenges often show up when you need to shift how you think, who you are, and how you approach the challenge, the world. So some examples here, I'm going to explain these a little bit more just so you can start to see like how that is an adaptive challenge. Because simply they're just a little more complex, right? So when you're trying to solve a challenge with cultural resistance to change, so solving this is of course more than just technical skills. You've got to address underlying beliefs, manage emotions, and quite frankly, lead a cultural shift. So people here must adjust their mindset. They have to build trust in a whole new system, and they have to learn new habits. I mean, cultural change is just a lot of not cultural change, but the resistance to the change. It's a big change management thing that you have to, stay on top of with people so that they don't people get scared when they don't know what's going on. And there's a whole host of things, right? Another example is transitioning from agile from agile to traditional project management. I'm not sure I got my notes in there right. I think I was trying to say to agile from traditional. Either way, going either direction between those two is a challenge. So if you have been running your projects as a traditional waterfall project, right? This happens and then this and this and this, and then we're done. Agile works quite a bit different. So when you're making that shift, you've got to adjust to new tools, new types of timelines, like things are just organized differently. It demands that our teams actually change how they think about project delivery, about customer feedback, about flexibility. And of course, Agile is a lot more like an experimental mindset because you're going to quickly turn out something, see how it works or doesn't work or whatever, and then go back in and iterate again and iterate again. So it's a lot of behavior change. You're learning to iterate quickly. And you also have to have an environment that embraces adaptability and continuous improvement. And if you've been running waterfall projects, or if you've been in a environment that's running a lot of waterfall projects, agile approach is very, very different. Another example of an adaptive challenge. So again, trying to give you some examples that aren't as big as climate change, something maybe a little closer to home, but leadership development and succession planning. So this also isn't just like, hey, Johnny, you're going to take over. We're done. Like it doesn't work that way. You can just delegate out of it. It requires cultivating new leaders, new leadership styles. You have to sometimes shift organizational values and address generational differences between leadership approaches, right? Because the people who are retiring out are typically much older than the people who are coming up, coming into, the leadership roles. And just in the generational gap, and we think about things differently, we do things differently. So those are some more things from an adaptive challenge standpoint that have to be addressed. And you can't just have a checklist to do that. So once again, adaptive challenges involve significant mindset shifts. You've got to change culture. You've got to experiment and learn new behaviors. It's not just solved on expertise alone, existing expertise alone. And of course, requires emotional intelligence and openness to learning. And again, that iterative approach to problem solving. Take a quick drink. So now that you kind of see the difference between a technical and adaptive challenge, I want to take it and turn the lens to personal transformation. Because this is where, when I was sitting in the workshop, I was like, wow, this, when working with my clients so that they can kind of see, and it's kind of how the approach that I use works anyway, but to be able to explain it in a maybe more clear way, this gives me some better language, I think. Whereas before I hadn't thought about it in terms of this. And so it's more, it's just different when you have to explain it. Okay. So in your personal life, what technical challenges are you trying to overcome? These are the tasks where the solution is already clear and you just have to implement it. So if you want to improve your diet, the implementation is a technical solution. You have a diet plan, you have a meal plan, right? And it can be, a structured or unstructured or whatever it is that you want, but you know what needs to happen and you just implement it. Now, the discipline of implementing is another thing, but you know what to do in order to get there. Now, if you're looking to move more, same kind of thing. You can sign up for a yoga class or a boot camp. You can follow a fitness app. It's a very straightforward path in order to move your body more. If stress is overwhelming, one thing you could do is like start to schedule some dedicated time for self-care. Another clear step. This one's going to get a little sticky, I think, when we get into the adaptive portion of it. So if it's a simple temporary stress relief, I'll say that is where that schedule some time for self-care, do the thing that works for you. The example for adaptive, you'll see why I made this distinction. But again, these solutions are practical, action-oriented, and rely on expertise or resources that are readily available, that already exist, whether it's with you or you have to go see an expert. But this is where then many of us get stuck. We try to solve adaptive challenges of our transformation with those kind of technical solutions. Okay. It doesn't work. You might get some temporary relief, but long term, it's not going to work. So let's talk about somebody who's struggling with chronic stress, with burnout, right? This is what we talk about a lot. And so, of course, that's going to be my example. Many of us can relate to this. So, this person might approach the problem as a technical solution. So, again, thinking, well, I'm stressed. Let me go to a yoga class. Let me go get a massage, or whatever the case is. Believing that if you just do that one thing, that you're going to solve the underlying problem. Also, you could be thinking, maybe I need to manage my workload better, right? Delegate some stuff off, implement some more self-care, take breaks, exercise. Again, these things, these technical solutions, are not going to solve the adaptive problem of the chronic stress and burnout. So while, yes, they are technical fixes and they will work short term, your underlying problem remains unsolved. You're still dealing with stress and burnout in some way, is very likely. So this person, our example person, continues to feel overwhelmed, exhausted, emotionally disconnected from work or personal life. Because again, the real challenge is deeper. It's much more complex. And again, that is why it's an adaptive challenge. So it's not just the workload. It's that person's relationship with stress, maybe some perfectionism, a belief that success comes from this hustle energy, pushing harder, getting more done. So we've got to confront the status quo. We've got to confront how this person defines self-worth. How do you handle uncertainty? How have you come to believe that you must meet every expectation, no matter the personal cost? So all of this can also be layered with, I can't focus, I can't remember details. Oh, that scared me. A little reminder popped up. Awesome. And also maybe they're running out of energy every afternoon. So there's a lot of symptoms that are occurring, and one technical solution is not going to solve all of it. You can maybe pinpoint it and get that minor relief like we talked about, but it's not fixing the entire ecosystem. So one thing that's got to happen is a mindset shift. Start to change behaviors, experimenting with setting boundaries, learning to say no, redefine what your version of success is, and have it not be doing everything all the time, right? Doing what matters most and doing it well while staying well, which is probably the most important part. And so that means, again, going beyond the surface to just recognize that the problem isn't just the task at hand, isn't just what's right in front of our face. There's an underlying ecosystem of symptoms that have to be addressed. We've got your beliefs, your resilience level, right? How do you actually handle stress physically and mentally? And what are your habits that are driving the cycle of burnout? Or maybe you are trying some habits to get out of burnout, but why aren't they working? So there's lots of different things at play, which is what makes the personal transformation, the idea of personal transformation, especially out of chronic stress and burnout, complex, makes it an adaptive challenge. So a little more detailed into why I believe this is an adaptive challenge. So one, the solution isn't clear, right? We said a technical challenge has a clear technical solution. The challenge is clear and the solution is also clear. This one, there's a lot of things at play, so there's no one size fits all. Again, numerous interconnected symptoms, so you can't just treat one and expect everything to be solved. New attitudes and behaviors that have to be learned which takes time, especially like trusting that one is enough, even when you do less, if you're less productive. I got the hiccups too. I'll try not to hiccup through the rest of the episode. And also progress is going to come through trial and error, which is again that experimental mindset. You've got to see what works for that individual situation, for that individual symptom, and process, learn, and evolve from there. The obstacles are mental and emotional as well. And so breaking away from old, deeply held values, right? Some from childhood that say success means never resting. I mean, like for me, I've been working since I was 16. And before that, I was a busybody doing all kinds of things. So, yeah, I mean, success for me was not resting. I mean, even today, I have a hard time sitting still. Well, what am I? Well, I can't sit on the couch for more than 5 minutes. What have I got to do to, check this off or get that done? Right. It's a deeply ingrained, it's probably beyond a habit at that point. It's just like the way that you are, and trying to change that takes time. It takes a lot of trying different things and seeing what works. Now, in our example person here, they might have again tried all these technical solutions we talked about, have a meal plan, time management hacks, take a vacation, but it's not getting to like all of the ecosystem of symptoms. And I like that idea of the ecosystem of symptoms, right? Because it's not just one thing. And the problem is going to continue to persist. So once you start to recognize that your problem is adaptive and you can't solve it with a meal plan, you can't solve it with a yoga class. So you can then stop applying band-aids, quote unquote, and commit to the more difficult but ultimately transformative work of changing your relationship with stress, and go from stress to success from the inside out. So in my coaching practice, I often see clients who are trying to improve their health. I mean, I'm a healthy lifestyle coach. That's the name of the game. But they'll focus on things like meal planning or joining a gym. Again, technical solutions that are great starting points. So let's not negate the technical solution. They are great starting points. But you have to be very honest with yourself if you're using that solution to solve a technical challenge or to solve an adaptive challenge. And many times we miss addressing deeper issues like mindset and self-worth. So I try to do a lot of work on mindset and understanding like where you're coming from, the approach, how you're thinking about things, and what shifts might need to happen so that you can be successful in the transformation. Yeah, and a lot of times people struggle with their self-worth, believe they don't deserve to take time for themselves. So that's kind of an interesting and difficult one, right? If this is just a deeply ingrained belief that I don't have to take time for myself, it's kind of, you can't sit somebody down and say, take time for yourself. Sometimes it would be nice if it was so easy, right? But it's often not. And solving that technical piece is not going to lead to lasting change until we can start to address those adaptive pieces. So I'm going to reiterate one more time. You cannot solve an adaptive challenge with a technical solution. You have to be willing to shift your mindset, to experiment with new behaviors, and to stay open to evolving over time. All right. In the book, When Everyone Leads, the authors identify 5 barriers to progress on adaptive challenges. And so I thought this would be a super interesting approach, because, okay, yeah, we understand. I now know what a technical challenge is. I now know what an adaptive challenge is. But what are these barriers that we face when trying to solve the adaptive challenge? Because that's ultimately, I mean, you think you get the concept, but when you start to do it, it's easy to get stuck. It's easy to not see okay, this is a type of barrier. How do I get out of here? So I'm going to break them down one by one, and I'm going to approach it as from the challenge of the personal transformation. So we'll just stay with personal transformation. So the first is navigating loss. When going through personal transformation, there is always some form of loss involved. Loss of existing habits, um, comfort zones, self identity. Sometimes it can affect your relationships, and whether it is a good or a bad, the relationship is affected, and so that can be a form of loss. Someone might feel loss on the familiar hustle driven mindset if they're learning to prioritize self care and balance. So it's not just about gaining something new. We're not always just adding on, like having more energy or having more mental clarity, right? We also have to acknowledge and sit with sometimes the discomfort that comes from releasing what no longer serves you, even if and especially if it's unhealthy. If the thing that you're losing is unhealthy, not sitting with the discomfort, just to be clear. And people may resist change simply because they want to avoid that discomfort that is associated with the loss that is associated with the discomfort. Did I just say that right? They're uncomfortable and they don't want to be. And so they'll resist change. And therefore, progress stalls when people aren't prepared for this sense of loss and start to cling to their old ways out of fear. So, an example, just to kind of give a little perspective, perhaps, around what this looks like. So, a high achiever, right? Many of us are high achievers. We would consider ourselves high achievers. If you don't consider yourself a high achiever and you're here, maybe it's just that you resist the label, but you may be a high achiever. But they struggle to scale back their work or their work hours because they equate working long hours with success. And early in my career, I saw a lot of this. I saw a lot of people my age, and especially ones that didn't have families yet. So I had already had my daughter, but I was working around a bunch of young people who didn't have kids, and just equating, well, if I stay here late, or if I stay here later than my boss, then I'll be more successful. I believe there was even a boss that said, I expect you to stay here later than me, and that's how you're going to be successful, which I don't condone. That was awkward with watching these people, right, say these things to these young people. Not okay. But that's how these things get, we either see it from other people or people are telling us, not okay. What's going on within you. So another, what's the word I'm looking for? Barrier to adaptive challenges is reordering values. So personal transformation also requires a shift in your values, or maybe reprioritizing them, right? If you're moving from valuing external validation, right? People have to tell you things, praise, promotions, achievement, to valuing internal fulfillment. That's the shift you're moving to, is internal fulfillment. So your well-being, your life balance, your purpose. And so people may realize that they've been prioritizing values that conflict with their long-term health and their happiness. And so then to make progress, they've got to reassess and reorder these values in a way that aligns with their personal growth goals. So, another example, right? Someone recovering from burnout might need to stop placing productivity above everything else and start valuing well being and rest. And this shift can feel destabilizing because it means challenging values that you have built an entire identity around. Sometimes it doesn't have to be such a big shift, right? If you already had some sense of value in your well being, it's just a slight reprioritization. But for people who have completely disregarded and not valued it, thinking, I can do whatever I want and I'll be fine, I'll live to be 100 perhaps, it's a vast difference in the change that has to be made there. So that's a barrier. The next barrier is resisting the allure of a quick fix, right? The immediate gratification. So many of us are tempted to grab these quick fixes like fad diets or productivity hacks. And again, you might get some temporary relief. You might find some burst of motivation, but you're not getting to the root of the issue, right? It's one of those band-aids. And it doesn't address the root of the adaptive challenge, which of course requires that deeper, more sustained effort. So the adaptive challenges in transformation require patience and ongoing experimentation and learning and evolution, really. You've got to iterate through the process. And so the allure of a quick fix, right, is very attractive, and it can derail progress because it keeps you from fully engaging in the deep work that you really need to do to make that lasting change. So you can think of it as like getting a flat tire on the side of the road, right? It's a bump in the road. You might see some kind of progress for a moment, but it's really a delay. A flat tire on the side of the road might not have been a good example for that, but the end effect really is what that feels like. Now, here's an example once again, right? So someone is trying to reduce stress and they might adopt like a quick meditation practice, right? 60 seconds over my lunch hour, or use a time blocking technique. But until they address deeper issues, like your inability to set boundaries, so a lack of boundaries cannot be solved by time blocking. I mean, it could help, but you're not going to solve it with just time blocking. And so your stress is going to continue to build. So the next barrier is in the book, they call it more than authority, but it refers to the idea that you can't just rely on the external advice or systems of control, like your boss, your coach, or even a fitness plan to guide your change, right? True transformation requires taking responsibility for your own growth, okay? Owning it yourself. So hiring a coach, while I would love to work with you, right? I can't make you do the change. I can't make it happen for you. You have to own that change. You have to own the action. So again, mentors, programs, systems, courses, whatever, they can help, right? Especially if you just are missing a piece of education that can make you understand something better. Lasting change requires self-leadership. I love this term, self-leadership and internal motivation. And it's about being an active participant in the process, right? Life doesn't happen to you, right? You're happening to life. And so what are you going to do to make the change? Don't just passively follow external guidance or wait for someone else to fix things. Being your own guide is really the most effective. It's the best way to get out of it, right? Long term. Now you can get external help. Don't get me wrong. I mean, of course, I'm a coach. Like I help people. I'm the external help. But again, I can't do it for you. So let's have another example, right? So there's a person, our example person, trying to improve their health. They might hire a coach, right? This is just what I'm saying. They might also decide to just follow a nutrition plan, but until they take the full ownership and understand, well, they got to this place by their own devices, and now I have to get out of this place by my own devices. Until they can own the process, adapting to their life, building self-discipline, staying accountable to themselves, their progress is going to be limited. So again, we're just putting a band-aid on things. Okay, coach, you're going to tell me what to do. Yeah, but that doesn't make it happen, right? I'm telling you, you should get 7 hours of sleep because it's going to help your brain process things overnight. It's going to help your body recover, but I can't sleep for you. That would be interesting if that could happen, right? So the next barrier is managing risk. Now, transformation by its very nature involves risk. People have to take emotional risks. You've got to face fears. You've got to confront limiting beliefs. I've got things falling down on my desk and buzzers going off and all the things. At least there's no hiccups now. There's social risks involved, right? You've got to set boundaries. There might be disappointing others. The changes that you're looking to make may not align with the people you hang out with. There might even be practical risks, right? You might have to change your career or make some big life decisions. And progress stalls when people are too afraid of these risks and they want to avoid them, right? When you avoid them, progress is going to stall. You've got to lean into them. Scary as they may be, leaning into them, sitting with that discomfort, that's where growth comes from, right? Managing risk in personal transformation does not mean avoiding it. Let's make that clear. I mean, not just in person, I mean, in anything, right? I was recently working on a project and we were talking about the risks involved, doing it, not doing it. And one of the risks was the change, how the people are going to be affected by the change, right? You could overwhelm them. You could cause them to be burnout because you're overloading their workload. And the group that I was working with was like, well, that's not a risk. We just have to do the thing. It's still a risk. It can still happen because you take it off of the document doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? We can't just, pretend it's not happening. Similar thing. You can't just ignore it. The risks are there. You can't avoid them. And again, leaning into them, learning to take smart risks, experimenting and adapting along the way, that's how you start to make progress. Setbacks are inevitable, right? I mean, you may have heard like fail forward. It's like we're not failing, it's not the end, right? It's learning in action, really. So setbacks aren't failure. Rather, they're opportunities to practice resilience and adaptability. Another example, okay? Someone might avoid taking the risk of speaking up for themselves at work because they fear conflict or rejection, right? Without taking that risk, they'll continue to feel unheard, disempowered, which prevents them from making real progress in their personal growth. If they can speak up, then they open the door to empowerment and creating the changes they desire. But in the moment, speaking up is a big risk, depending on the situation, right? And depending on kind of how you're wired. Some people are more inclined to speak up than others. It's just different personalities, right? So these barriers, navigating loss, reordering values, resisting quick fixes, relying on more than authority, and managing risk are common obstacles in personal transformation. They're common obstacles when dealing with adaptive challenges. So people often face these adaptive challenges, but may not fully recognize them as such, which is why progress can be so difficult. So each of these barriers requires a deeper level of introspection, of patience, of personal accountability in order to overcome them. You can't just sweep them under the rug. All right. So now I want to share with you some practical applications for solving adaptive challenges. So there's going to be 3 steps here. And it's not the end all be all, but it's a place to get started, right? So now that you understand the difference between technical and adaptive challenges, and their solutions, right? How it plays out. Let's talk about how you can start solving adaptive challenges in your life. So it starts with recognizing that adaptive challenges take time and a curious mindset. You're not going to have to, you're not going to have all the answers right away, and that's okay. The problems need experimentation, they need you to be flexible, and it's going to require a lot of self reflection. And that in itself can be a challenge for people, it can be scary for some people, but when you're willing to sit down and reflect, this is how we learn. So there's 3 steps that you can take to start addressing adaptive challenges with, of your personal transformation. First, start with self-awareness. Notice what's happening. Notice when it's happening, right? If you're facing the adaptive challenges, if you're like, oh, I've been trying to solve an adaptive challenge with a technical solution, right? If you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or like nothing's working, just take a moment and ask yourself, does this issue require more than just a surface level fix? Does it need a deeper shift in how I'm thinking or how I'm acting? And be honest about it, right? Whether your current approach is actually helping or if you need to look deeper. The second is embracing a mindset shift. So again, adaptive challenges require a shift in your thinking and how you approach the problem. If you're feeling overwhelmed by stress, maybe it's not just about managing your time better. It could be about redefining your boundaries or letting go of perfectionism. What would you need to change in how you approach your day, your priorities, or your self-care? And the third and final is experimenting with new behaviors. Solving adaptive challenges requires trying new things, being willing to test different approaches and seeing what sticks, what works for you. That's how you start to find what works. It's not about the quick fix. It's finding what creates lasting change over time for you. So the first approach may not be the final solution, and you have to give yourself permission to adjust as you go. Alrighty. I hope that was like some sort of a revelation for you, because it was for me. I mean, if it wasn't for you, that's okay. Maybe you still just, found some value in the episode, but just having that frame of reference to approach these problems differently, I feel like it's very empowering, right? To know I now have like a different set of tools to kind of process what I'm going through and how I can approach change. Okay, so now let's talk about this week's energizing habit. So, since we're talking about adaptive challenges today, I want you to try a simple habit that can shift your mindset. So, this week, try setting aside 5 minutes each day to journal about a challenge where you feel stuck. Just set a timer, have a piece of paper, whatever, and just write about a challenge where you feel stuck. And so maybe it's 5 different challenges each day, or 7 if you do all 7 days of the week. Or you can write about the same one every time. See what works for you, right? Ask yourself, what belief or habit is keeping me stuck here? What deeper shift is needed? Am I trying to solve this with a technical solution when it's really an adaptive challenge? Just spending a few minutes journaling or thinking through this can start to help you process through it, right? And it can be the first step to even uncovering the real issue and starting to shift your approach. Now, if this episode resonated with you and you're realizing that you've been tackling adaptive challenges with technical solutions, I invite you to join me in my Energy to Thrive project. It's my one-on-one coaching program. And here we don't just tackle the surface level issues. We get to the root of the adaptive challenges that are holding you back. The name of the game is going for personal transformation, right? It's not just implementing new habits. And I'm here to help you build a sustainable strategy for growth. You don't have to go through it alone. Let's work on it together. So you can head to the link in the show notes. There will be information there. You can learn more. You can apply. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to see a consult call come in for you to help you. At least let's talk through. Have you been working through the challenges with the wrong approach? There's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes just bouncing it around with somebody else can be revealing. It might help you see things from a different perspective. You weren't by yourself. So if you found this episode helpful, I want to hear from you. Like the episode, whatever platform you're listening on, and take a screenshot and tag me in your Instagram stories. My handle is at Uplift Healthy Lifestyle. I want to cheer you on and see what resonates with you, right? So if this episode resonated with you, I'd love to know about it. So thanks for tuning in today. Remember that you can change your life without overhauling your lifestyle, but it starts with addressing the challenge with the right set of solutions. The key to personal transformation is not just about doing more, it's about applying the right solution and knowing when you need to shift your approach. So again, I hope this episode gave you a fresh perspective on the challenges that you're facing on your own journey of transformation. And I hope it's inspired you to start making some lasting changes in your life. Until next time, take care and have an energized day.